Welcome to another edition of Working with Gen Z. Friends, we've often told that Gen Z is the digital native cohort. It's a generation which is so comfortable with technology, and perhaps when we compare them, their tech savviness with the other generations, they clearly sort of have the edge and they like working with technology. But when we look at the progress of the technology itself, it seems to have accelerated far beyond what most of us have kind of imagined. And the technology curve has really not become a linear curve, it's becoming an exponential curve. And in this episode, we really want to examine what does that mean. We clearly see benefits of technology. And then to kick off this show, this particular episode, I'm going to just show a chart here which shows the progress of the technology. And as we can see from 1750 to 2050, we're not there yet. You can see how rapidly technology has progressed. It hasn't progressed as much perhaps in the century of 1750 to 1850 and then 1850 to 1950, but if you look at the last 100 years, we're not even there yet. You can see the rapid curve. And what you see at the bottom was also the fact that generations are living longer, which means that while we're living longer, so much of the technology is changing. Now, what's the corollary to this? The corollary to this is very simple. It's the fact that this has an impact on the talent at the workforce, right? And in this particular chart, we're really gonna just talking about if you think about industry 4.0 or even 5.0, the rate and the speed at which technology is changing, it is meaning and having a great impact on all of us. Why just Gen Z? The primary of which is the concept of learning agility, which means we have to forego what we may have known from the past, learn new things, we have to adapt, we have to take kind of a transdisciplinary mindset, and all of the things because the nature of problems are becoming much more complex. And today we're going to focus on one particular theme, which is that of AI, which has taken the world by storm. And there's this view from one extreme to say that AI will solve all my problems, to the other extreme that says that, well, we still need to retain our critical thinking. And where is kind of, is there a happy medium? But what does it mean for a young Gen Z who's entering the workforce? So to help me with that is an expert and a good friend and a good colleague, John Dentico. John, good morning and welcome to the show.
Oh, great to be here. Nice to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I hope you had a good vacation, and I'm very happy we're finally making this happen in 2025. This is a topic that I think I am very curious, and I think so are our listeners. We see so much about written about it, talked about it. But before we dive all into all of that, John, I want to take a couple of minutes and just request you to share your story. Tell us a little bit about your listeners' background, all the work that you do, and so that we can know, who you are and what's the backstory.
Well, simply, I grew up in New York City. I'm a product of many Catholic schools, some of whom I'm sure would hold their heads today, wondering how I got where I am. My lifelong dream was to become a naval officer, which I did accomplish. And I spent 11 and a half years on active duty as a surface warfare officer, ship driver, as we like to say, and finished off in the reserves and retired as a commander in the Naval Reserves. And from that, I entered into business, and it was such a chilling difference for me because there was this code of honor, if you will, in the military, and you move into business, and there was this significant gap in my thinking anyway.
Mhm.
So, I started in the beginning of 1993 trying to this became an issue that I said, "Maybe I can do something about." And in 1993, I started a doctoral program, in leadership doctorate at the University of San Diego. And, up until that time, I'd been involved in gaming and simulation work in the Navy. And at that point, I was trying to figure out, okay, what am I gonna write my doctoral dissertation on? What can I do? And it came to my mind that what I needed to do was figure out if I could create a simulation that actually teaches leadership or demonstrates leadership without in those days, in the early '90s, without a computer. Just putting people in a room and giving them a difficult, arduous, scenario and letting them play through it as different stakeholder groups to, in a sense, create this very complex decisional environment, allow them to try, stop it, and then kind of work with them to find a better solution. So that was really the jumping off point for my work. And more and more, I continued on doing different types of consulting work. I spent 10 years at the Division of Public Safety Leadership at Johns Hopkins University, and participated on things like counterterrorism and uh, identity theft, those kinds of issues, and created and applied different processes that we needed to use in order to produce the products that they were tasked in doing. And then, in 1995, no, I take that back, sorry. In 2015, there's a big difference there. In 2015, I started writing my book, Throttle Up: How to Accelerate the Impact of 21st Century Leadership, sort of a culmination of the things that I had learned and the processes I had developed. Finished it in 2019, and then, as all of us had to do, wait out COVID right after that point. And then now I'm sort of back in the business of speaking and teaching and creating online learning systems, and enjoying it more now than I probably ever have.
Fantastic. Well, what a diverse and a super fascinating kind of background from the Navy to you got the PhD and of course John Hopkins and all the work that you do. So, uh, really excited, John. Let's get to it. We're gonna dive into the work that you do and obviously the topic that we've chosen. So we're gonna talk about the whole world's talking about AI and is it an enemy, is it a friend? And I think to set the level base here for our listeners, just maybe in a simple way. I think, can you give, what, when we talk about AI, perhaps people associate with a tool like ChatGPT or, the one that Google has come out. And now, every country is talking about their own model of AI and so on. So maybe in a very simplified way, is AI largely kind of an algorithm which is coming up with all the data that's fed into it? Just if we can help kind of first just explain that in a simple term.
Well, AI for many years was a fairy tale. I mean, people never thought we'd get here. And it's really the development of the chips and the ability of those chips to communicate with one another to create something in the AI world called coherence. Okay. So as I understand it, I could be wrong with the numbers here, but for example, in ChatGPT, there are 33,000 chips that are able to communicate with one another. And a couple of days ago, Elon Musk and his XAI group just showcased Grok 3, which is their AI system that is now using 200,000 chips to create a much greater level of coherence. And the problem, as I understand it, they solved was the ability, the internet, if you will, the chip internet problem, so those chips can communicate with one another. But what AI is able to do is take a massive amounts of information and knowledge and combine it in a processed way that gives you that provides almost instantaneous results based on issues or problems that an individual is facing. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. If you think of it as AI as an assistant, like having an office full of assistants that can do this, you might have to hire 10 or 12 people, who are on the computers all the time to be able to come up with what ChatGPT, for example, or an AI system comes up with, but it would take them hours. Whereas in the AI systems now, it just takes seconds. It's unbelievable. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this was very good, sort of a layman version. This, as we say, that it's the power of the chips trying to make sense of what we know from the past and how we can extrapolate from the past to the current and look beyond. One quick thing, John, before we move to the implications of this, there's also a lot of talk, and perhaps just as a point of clarification, is also this debate about, the different types of AI model. In other words, very recently I saw on LinkedIn where someone said that I asked one question and one prompt to a certain, I think it was ChatGPT, and it came up with one answer, and then it was for something else, it came up with a slightly very different answer. And one was looking at a historical context, and one was looking at with another kind of data. So uh, the whole talk about model, where is the boundary, or is it largely, I mean, the designer then taking a view that, okay, I want to focus this AI tool, if you will, or AI engine, if you will, to maybe focus on a particular, have a particular slant of looking at things versus the other. So, if you can just shed light on whatever that is, because I think that, to me, understanding that will be important as we talk about the implication for Gen Z as we move forward.
Okay. AI is not objective. ChatGPT is not objective. It has biases, either biases that have been uh, knowingly entered into it or subconsciously entered into it. So one of the issues with AI is the level of diversity of the knowledge that it's drawing upon. The idea being that it should have the widest diversity, the widest set of opinions that it can access in order to bring that information to the forefront, or to the question or problem that someone's coming along that's asking. The other thing to know about ChatGPT, as with human beings, how you ask a question
Hmm.
is how the data will come back. So you have to be nuanced in the sense of knowing how to ask a question. So one of the great things about it is it's it's ready and willing to go to work for you at any time. And no matter how many times you ask a question, it will answer it. And you can cue it, as I'll call it cue it. Or a lot of people say prompting, which is, the word. So for example, you could ask it a question, as I've done, and then say, "No, I wanna know this piece of that. Let's explore this. You can say, "Let's peel that onion back and tell me more about this." So you can actually get iteration after iteration until you get to a point where perhaps the individual who's asking the question feels a lot more comfortable with it. So that's the thing to remember. The one of the issues that I've concentrated on, and, I've just recently finished my certificate as an artificial intelligence management professional, and with that is all about the association of the ethical aspects. For example, how how does it crunch the numbers? Okay? Transparency, for example, is an issue, and as well as how is it doing its business? And I think the problem right now, and I mentioned this on several of my own podcasts, is that the level, and as you pointed out, the speed of development across the world of AI tools is incredible. It's just unbelievable. And because of that, the question in my mind is, are the ethics keeping up? And the only way we can hope, at least at this point, that the ethics are keeping up is that the people who are developing it are bringing the ethics along with it. And if they're not, the ethical use of it, the ethical development of it, really, that's where I'll talk about it. Is it getting the wide array of data and diversity of information that it needs to make a decision, or to provide feedback? So we have to hope that those companies are keeping abreast with the ethical considerations as the development continues.
Sure. So I think I'm going to double click on that in a moment here, JD. John, let's talk about one. Here's a question which is making a lot of headlines, and I don't know if it is subject to the Gen Z cohort as well. Like as we were talking just before, this episode, is that ChatGPT has eased our lives in so many things. Obviously, as you very rightly pointed out, there is a bias. So let's take now. Here's the question. My son's graduating in in 4 months. Okay, I see him using it for assignments. He's applying to grad schools in the US, and there's a clear mention by some of the Ivy League schools that we're going to check your responses against, have you used a automated response from a tool like ChatGPT, right? So there is an element of like how helpful it can be, but can it be overused? My question is, you have a young cohort is entering in the workforce about the age of the eldest is 26, 27, right? Now you got a tool which makes it so easy. Let's first address how much of this whole talk about AI taking away jobs and entry level jobs. And we know of industries where, there are data entry jobs, and a lot of that was anyway was about to getting, automated, or has been in many years. But is this debate about the fear of loss of jobs for the young cohort? How real is that? And if a young Gen Z is listening to this, what's your advice to them?
Well, in order to answer that, I have to quote Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of NVIDIA, who is creating NVIDIA is creating the chips that, as far as I know, most every AI system runs on. And he said, I think I'm quoting him correctly here, uh, "You don't have to worry about AI taking your job. You have to worry about someone who understands and uses AI to take your job." And I think that's absolutely right on the money. It is as prolific as the Internet. Today, we can't even think about existing without the Internet, whether it's online banking, whether it's getting information. Listen, I remember I was there in the early '90s when the Internet was truly coming online, when browsers were coming into their own. And I will tell you that I built my first Windows-based computer in 1993 when I had a whopping 1 megabyte of RAM, okay? I have a computer sitting here that has 48 gigabytes of RAM and a 10 megabyte hard drive, and I wrote my doctoral dissertation on that computer. And I will tell you, it wasn't easy because oftentimes the software would be corrupt, and I would have to reload the software on 3 and a quarter inch floppies and hopefully make sure I had the latest version of my dissertation on another floppy in order for me to start the process all over again. It was just crazy. Now you don't even think about that stuff. So in many respects, the revolution we experienced then is exactly the kind of revolution we're experiencing now with AI, but at a much, much faster rate because AI does things so quickly and it brings us along with it. So instead of spending 3 days or 2 days on trying to work an issue, Nikhil, we spend maybe 10 minutes on it and we move on to the next thing. So it's bringing us along. Now, I have to tell you, in terms of leadership, I have been waiting over 30 years for this moment in time. And I say that because the leadership models that we've used in organizations that are still left over from the industrial time are being shredded. They're just being torn to pieces. Well, why is that? Well, it used to be, here's an example, that the most knowledgeable person in the organization was the CEO or the COO, right? They had the information at their fingertips. Walk into a room today and ask, "Who's the smartest person in the room?" And I guarantee you, it might be a Gen Zer who spends 3 or 4 hours a day working with an AI system, developing ideas, thinking about future, asking it about what the future threats might be to their organization and to their company and to their brand. And that person may have at their fingertips the knowledge, chances are they will have at their fingertips, the knowledge they need to actually move the organization forward. So leadership is really moving from this notion of position to an idea of influence. Leadership is an influence relationship, and you're seeing it come right alive today. You can't deny it in terms of the world we live in.
No, absolutely. So well said. I really like what you said that it isn't about it's going to take your job, but it's about the individual who will use this and you're not using it in the potential of that. And I think the point that you make about also the fact that the hierarchy is where the knowledge resided. I think that model is certainly gone. Um, and so I think that's an excellent point. I do have, and now the flip side, John, which is that obviously there is such a with anything, when we say internet is really connected the world and smart devices have connected us around the world and all of that, there's always a kind of a downside or a dark side of, the web and, the dark side of social media is so much too much of a good thing, right? So let's talk briefly now on that. I mean, I look at this with my son again as an example, and I keep telling him he's aware, he's self-aware. I use this as an example where he, the other day he says that, I've stopped writing emails. I just ask GPT, I take the email. He's writing to some of these schools, and I said that, make sure it's drafted properly and so on and so forth. And obviously we go through some rounds, but there is this view that it's easing your life. It's giving you a lot of information at your fingertips, right? Is it also killing your thinking? Is it also, in other words, if you look at your generation, our generation, John, we had to go through the grinding, sort of the good old way, right? And I almost look back to say that, there was a lot of, there's a merit to that. Obviously, we can, at maybe at our stage in our career, we can say that, a tool like ChatGPT just eases what we know and we can correct it. But if someone's young in his 20s, mid 20s, right? If everything is being fed to them on a platter, right? Is it killing their thinking ability and more importantly, the critical thinking? Because I sense that, as you said in the beginning, if there is a bias, are we just are we forming an opinion? And this generation, especially, John, where maybe they're not questioning enough, right? To say that okay, there is another element to if I look at a conflict or a war or any other aspect of what's being fed today. So just curious to know what's your take on that?
I think that's a great question, and I think the answer is it can. It depends, I think, on the individuals, the teachers, the counselors who are assuring that there is some of that old school methodology, if you will, of, okay, you can't use ChatGPT on this. You have to go find it out. And you have to understand the theoretical constructs of it. Uh, and I want you to do that. There'll be a great resistance to that because it's so easy to just
Yeah.
jump on to the ChatGPT and get it to solve the problem. But I think we have to find ways to make sure that they understand that behind all of this, there is this data pool that we've used for years in order to create the knowledge we needed to go forward. So I absolutely agree it can be. The other one that worries me is the nefarious use of AI on the web, and that
Can
is
you say more,
that is
like just as a way, because I think our Gen Z cohort needs to hear sort of the pro and the con, right?
right. Well, and the pro is, like, for your son, for example. It would be interesting, I don't know if he wants to do something like this, but it would be interesting that let's say he's putting in his, proposal to join the school, for example. Let's use that. Would it be interesting for him to say, "Oh, by the way, I use ChatGPT to do this, this, and this. Thoughts are the original thoughts are mine. What I've done is I've used ChatGPT to help me with the syntax, to help me with the spelling, and different things like that, and to be forthcoming." And that's something that's really on the minds of a lot of people. It's okay to use ChatGPT. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Just tell people what you're doing with it. Just be forthcoming, and I think that helps build a level of trust. Here's the interesting thing about ChatGPT. You can have all the ChatGPT, and not just ChatGPT.
Yes,
Let me take that back. Of AI systems, I want to just talk in general. I don't want to. I'm not looking to single out ChatGPT
sure.
by any stretch, but AI systems in general. Okay, you can be. You need to be forthcoming. But the most important thing is, and there's a general agreement that if you're working with a system and for some reason you lose trust in that system, or the company loses trust of the people that use it, it's gonna be real hard to get it back. And people will just say, "Hey, you can't trust the system. You can't trust the people behind it, and as quickly as it has arisen, it will die." That's my take on it. So, one of the things I feel is many of these AI developers, our understanding is we can't lose trust with the public. If somebody finds something in here that is not right, and we know, social media, it'll be out there in a few seconds, then I think that's a way to, if you will, throttle, if you will, throttle how the distribution and acceptance of AI is. So that's just a thought.
Okay.
Um Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think no, that's a good point. I like, especially, to say that let's just be clear about it and be self-aware and be forthcoming, you know, put in the effort to come up with your own version and refine it with ChatGPT. So two more kind of follow-up questions there, John. One is, of course, you've talked about the ethical dilemma. So just talk a little bit more, like where is that ethical dilemma that comes when you think about the AI systems in general? And there's also the debate about, a lot of what we read is people comparing the human creativity versus AI, who has the edge, and kind of, do we lean on one versus the other? So what's your take on that? And again, and from the messaging for the Gen Z, like what? So talk a little bit about the ethical side, like, okay, what to keep in mind? Where is that dilemma? And second is the debate about human creativity versus AI, right? So what should the Gen Z keep in mind?
Okay, let's talk about the human side of it. Uh, the first thing that people have got to really understand is that AI is not human. Okay, it's not a human being. It's an assistant. It's a processing system, and they need to keep that in mind. Several months ago, I had a guy named Ed Temple from Canada on my podcast. He's a MCC qualified coach, and he said, AI will probably, and oh, by the way, Ed uses a coaching AI system called Enzo. So he has this thing you can call Enzo and ask him coaching questions and different things like that. So I said, "Well, Ed, yeah, you're automating everything. Are you gonna?" And he said, "No, no, no, no. You don't understand." He said, "AI systems will take over about 80% of the redundant things that we do." Okay. I said, "Okay." He said, "Which makes the human 20% even more important." And I think that's absolutely
Mm.
right. I think I think when you talk about the human sensibility, we there is this feeling, there's thought that if the more chips we can add to, you know, as I said, Grok 3 is at 200,000 now. I think that's what I saw. And they're talking about 1,000,000. They're talking about 2,000,000 chips, maybe 1,000,000,000 chips. I mean, who knows? But the idea is it's crazy. But the idea is when we get there, it'll be a very interesting observation to see if it can have feelings, whether it can, uh, uh, truly approach human intelligence. And there are some who say, "Oh, they're already," and I'm saying, "Yeah, I'm not sure yet." But this is the idea. The other thing about the ethical aspects of it is I would counsel people that use AI systems, no matter who those people are, whether they're Gen Zers, baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, have a suspicious eye,
Mm.
is what I would call. I
Excellent.
have a suspicious eye.
Yeah.
I put data in, As I mentioned to you, I've used it a couple of times already to develop speaking proposals, and I'll put it in, and it'll make me sound really great. But there's a lot of stuff in there that's not right, okay? The word I saw the other day is it has a tendency to hallucinate, and I think, that's kinda true. So you've gotta be able to say, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute." That I have to bring that back to reality. I wanna use a different set of words. I don't want to be over the top. Now, I'm sure they're gonna people who will just take it and push it out there and make you think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you have to have a very suspicious eye, as they say, an eye, of critique, a critical eye to look at it and say, I can't really put that out there. It's helped me a great deal. It's done a beautiful job, but let me bring this back a little bit and add this piece, which is much more realistic about who I am. I mean, I can't tell you, and you know this, I can't tell you how many people I've had on my podcast that have talked about branding, marketing, leadership, coaching, and the message is always the same. Be authentic, be real, be you, be who you are, and don't be afraid to be that person. That to me is the common denominator here. This is the thing we have to make sure that we as people continue to strive to do. It's a great tool. It's phenomenal. I mean, there's no question about it. But we can't lose our humanity in this wasteland. If we do, we're really missing something.
Now, wow, what it is I really like. I also like how you said in the wasteland, but I think I know in the context you're saying, John, but I like to have a healthy dose of suspicion, which is good because it's the humans who actually created the AI, and you want to use it. You cannot escape technology, but don't sort of become a servant to the technology, right? That's the kind of way I look at it. um John, what's the role here that colleges can play, and more importantly, at the workplace the managers can play, right? So a lot of the Gen Z cohorts are still in education, schooling or colleges. That's one segment of it. But then there's a fair amount who's also in the workplace, from 24 or 27, and they already know this technology, right? So, what would you say if you're a professor? What kind of do's and don'ts? And again, if I'm a young Gen Z coming in, if I'm managing a Gen Z, right? What are some of the sort of words of advice, like, okay, how do you use it? Should we not use it? What's the where is the spectrum on that?
I think it's going to be widely used. That's it. I think that in fact it will proliferate like we can't even imagine. Another year, 2 years from now, we're not talking about 10 years. We're talking about next year, 6 months, 2 years. It's going to be it's going to be used by so many people. I think colleges and universities really need to have a course or 2 courses on the ethics of AI. I think they have to develop an ethical approach to it. This is how you use it. This is how you don't use it. This is how you don't wanna use it. Until something changes that I can't foresee, people still hire people. And what can we do to ensure that the best person, a good person, one who wants to work, develop, and gain a sense of meaning from the things that they do, as we talk about all the time. How can we position that person in an organization to not only do the technical skills, but in terms of being a collaborator, being someone who's fully involved in that organization, how can they truly help to make a difference? I think that the companies from here on out, because of this changing leadership model, there's just one reason. are now going to find themselves in an era of rapid prototyping. Rapid prototyping. And what I mean by that is we're not going to take 5 or 6 years to develop a product or service. ChatGPT is going to help us to turn that stuff around in about 6 months. Okay. What new products should we offer? What services should we offer? I know you were in the financial world for a long time. I mean, I know it just, it boggles the mind as to the questions you could have AI ask it and say, here's our clientele. Here's the people. What can we do to bundle? What kind of bundling,
Okay.
in a sense, can we
Process.
do with, right, with financial products to bring them to bring new clients, to help our existing clients, and in the end, make their lives better. Okay. That's really what we're trying to do with AI, is make people's lives better. I mean, and in the end, in the end, it's always about the people. In the end, it's always about the people. And so that's what we have to focus on. So I think universities, rather than just I impart the technical know-how and the technical expertise, they have to concentrate on ethics and focus on that, and then also to give them the ability to become part of an organization, to become part of the decision-making processes in that organization, because in doing that, they derive a phenomenal sense of meaning from their lives. I'm doing something that matters. No matter what happens, Nikhil, people wanna matter. They want their work to matter. They wanna make an impact. They wanna be heard. They wanna be masters of their own fate.
Yeah.
So, how do we organize ourselves to help them do that? I think that's kinda where I'm thinking it's gotta go.
Excellent. So two more questions here, John, just as a way to close off. The so where do you sense this will progress? I showed that one chart in the beginning of our conversation that it's taken a steep, sort of exponential curve and technology, and we're not even there. People are living longer, and technology is growing at such a rapid pace. And more specifically, from a Gen Z perspective, do you sense that for people like you and me, when we're thinking about a career, you kind of almost have said that, okay, I'm going to do X number of years, and then I'll move from one place in the organization to the next, and then I'll put another 4 years, and then I'll go from here to here, and then I'll go a partner. And there was almost like a timeline defined for us, but this changes everything, right? And so does that almost, if I'm a Gen Z now, how does my career get impacted, right? I mean, is AI now a job stealer or a job enabler? And will I need to be much more on my feet because of what is happening to my career? Because, uh, you had a 30-year career or a 35-year career, 40-year career, but nowadays people are on LinkedIn, you can see well into late 60s and even 70s working in good health and either wanting to do something out of a hobby or a need or whatever, right? So I'm saying there's a 50-year runway for this generation, right? And technology has eased so much of what it is. So for their careers, do you sense that becomes that much more harder for them as you kind of look at the runway? And what's your take on that?
Oh, well, that's great. It's a great question. Um, I have told people for years, and this is it's not just about Gen Zers, I mean, across the board. Don't raise your children with the question, "What do you want to be?" Don't ask them that question. It's a dumb question. Ask them, "What talents do you want to use? What are your talents and what do you want to use?" It used to be, years ago, people would stay in jobs for 30 years and 35 years, as you so pointed out. And when you move from one company to another after a couple of 3 years, you were called a job hopper. Remember that? I'm sure you remember that. "Oh,
Yes.
this person's a hopper." They're just here to, now, if you don't hop more often, they don't consider you have the right kinds of diverse experiences, if you will, to help the company. So here's my take. I think the best you can hang on to somebody now today is 5 years. If you've got them for 5 years, I had a guest on the other day who said, "We worked at 2 years. If we had this person for 2 years, we were great."
Yeah.
I said, "Wow, that's amazing." He said, "But we organized the company in such a way to do that, so that we immediately made them a part of the organization and part of the decision-making group." He said, "But if they left us in 2 years, we did okay." But I think 5 years is kind of the average. If you've got somebody for 5, 6, or 7 years, you're doing well. But they will move,
Yeah.
and they'll go someplace else because, I can remember years ago, I worked in a company that developed software, and we had great engineers, wonderful engineers. But the engineers, after 5 or 6 years, would leave the company, and they'd go someplace else, and we'd ask them, "Why are you leaving?" They said, "Well, because we're still using the same technology we used 5 or 6 years ago. If I don't move, I can't keep abreast with the new technology, so I have to look for a software company that's doing using new programming languages, for example. So I have to jump over there because I can't technologically stay abreast with my contemporaries if I don't do that." And I think there may be some sensibility about that with the Gen Zers and with Gen X or whatever. I have to move because I'm not staying up with what's happening now.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how AI affects that, in terms of as the new tools are coming on, and I think they will reach a point. I think this may be an interesting aspect because 'cause I've been thinking a lot about this,
Yeah.
where we may get to a point, and it's happened in other technologies, where we become saturated with AI, and we're looking for the human perspective again. So, I mean, and it's happening fast. Right now, I'm not so sure we're being saturated, but we're moving so quickly and so many tools are being developed by so many countries that, I think we will eventually reach a point of saturation. I mean, think about it this way. How many times do you wish when you get on a phone and you get the automated answering system, you wish there was a human being on the other side of that line, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So one final question here then, John. This has been fabulous. I think you've touched upon, the start of sort of the AI revolution and the ethical dilemma and how what's the positive and the kind of the downside. So one question here as a way to close, what's the kind of advice that you would give as a kind of the do's and the don'ts, right? So maybe one or two do's and the don'ts for the Gen Z. Here is a cohort who's born into the internet, they're digital native, right? So what advice would you have? Embrace it, be careful of not becoming too dependent. What advice would you have for the Gen Z? And then maybe on the flip side, what advice would you have for the organizations who are welcoming the Gen Z, saying that okay, AI is perhaps here to stay, and how do we take and make the best of the both, right? A cohort which is very tech savvy, perhaps very creative, and let's take the technology. So what's the yeah? What would you say?
Well, I'm gonna weave, several answers here into that question. So, the first thing I would say do is just be yourself. Be that human being. Connect on that level as a human being. You are good enough as you are. You're great. Don't you don't need anything else. Just be a good person, contribute, do your best, understanding that every day is gonna be great. And some days you're gonna have great days, but just, in a sense, move on and just be yourself. Remember that in the end, it's always about the people. Okay, so that to me is really important. Um, for organizations, this is something I've been thinking about is, you know, you and I, have leaned heavily, and I have to give you a tremendous amount of credit for giving me the one-liner that meaning is the new money, even though I've written about meaning for 25 years, but I never put it in such a succinct way. So, here's the question. Here's a bit of advice for the Gen Zers. Meaning is important. It's the greatest single motivation force on the planet. Now, the question becomes, how do you find an organization that will provide you the pathway to create meaning in your life, to be part of something special? Well, I'm gonna tell you one reason, a way to do it. The first thing you wanna do is you wanna get a hold of the company's mission statement. Get a hold of the company's mission statement. If they don't have one, uh, look elsewhere, okay? If they have one and it's 6 paragraphs long, you might wanna move on because that company doesn't know who they are. They're trying to make everybody like them. What you're looking for is one succinct, beautiful sentence that says, "This is who we are, this is what we do, and this is how we intend to do it, and this is where we're going." Because because in order for you, and I know this is a huge part for the Gen Zers and the younger folks, is you're looking for values alignment with the organization. You want to know they care about the same things you care about. Great. And the only way you can know that is if they have one singular mission statement that says, "This is who we are." You will find within the context of that mission statement their value system. You should find it. And then you can figure out, you know what? My value system looks a lot like that value system. We're on the same page. That might be the company you want to go find a job with. That may be the company that you seek out and say, "You and I share values. I think I can be an asset to you." And I think that's so, so very important. And if you can't, move on. If you have that ability, I mean, I know that sometimes it's tough to find a job. I get that. But if you have that ability, move on. Connect on values, connect on trust, connect on values, and then the technology and stuff will come. It'll be there. You'll be able to use it, make an impact, have a meaningful life, be more productive and prosperous. I mean, that's my greatest wish. That's part of my mission statement to help people become more productive, prosperous, and have a meaningful life. And that's what I would hope you as Gen Zers do is follow that path. And to the companies or CEOs of companies who may see this podcast, my point to you is simply this. If you don't have that mission statement, go get one. Go make it. Figure it out. And it can be done. It's hard because a lot of times you just want to throw stuff in there. Oh, I want this. I need that. I'll give you a relief. Give me one sentence. That's your mission statement, and I'll give you 3 bullets that can be amplifying statements afterwards. But you gotta hit it on the target. I, uh I, uh, I like to use lately the movie 300 with Gerard Butler about the Spartan stand at Thermopylae. I said, "Now they had a slogan, and their slogan was, 'This is Sparta.' Anybody not know who we are? No, everybody knows who we are. Crystal clear. Crystal clear. That was the slogan. Now, they didn't necessarily have a mission statement, but the idea was everybody in that village knew who they were, even the farmers. The farmers knew they were growing food, tilling the fields, raising the cattle to feed the warriors. Very simple, very clean. And that's what you need. You need very simple, very clean, a sentence long that says, "Hey, this is my company, and this is what we believe, and this is what we're gonna do, and these are the kind of people we're looking for."
Fantastic. No, what a great advice, I think, both for the Gen Z. It really about kind of the human element, right? And at the end of the day, as you say, it's technology's goal is to make us more productive, right? And I think you make a very important point here, John, which is often perhaps maybe in our generation, we, underappreciated the importance of values. And I mean, there was, it's not to say that it wasn't important, but I think we were quite happy to just join an organization if a opportunity sounded quite decent, and we were like, okay, this, I'm gonna, try my way through this, and then hopefully everything will work out, right? I think so. This generation is much more vocal, but also even more, the world's become more turbulent, and so all the more I think it makes a case for an alignment. And even on the company side, I really like just to make it simple, make it sharp, make it crisp, right? Let's not give them sort of a very verbose sort of a lawyer language if to what is a mission statement, vision statement. So excellent advice, and I hope that that's the message that every one of our listeners will kind of dial in. I do know, John, you do some great work. So tell us, where can people find you? Where are the coordinates? Tell us about the book, the fantastic podcast that you run, and anything else that I missed. Right. So please share so that every one of our listeners can also come and look you up.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. My website is www.throttleupleadership.com. And I will tell you that I'm going through a rather significant website change. It needs revision. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube and iHeart at the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. And Nikhil was there with me last year, and a wonderful, wonderful episode. I've had some amazing people. In fact, s- I- I've been blessed beyond words. I've had people who have been through unbelievable hardships. I've had 2 that went to jail, that were in prison, and now are incredibly successful entrepreneurs, and they told me that jail saved their lives. They had gotten mixed up when they were younger and things, and are now doing such amazing, amazing work. One gentleman, an amazing man, a very digital entrepreneur. Both his parents were in jail at the same time. His mother got out, took 2 jobs, and, um, told me that he didn't have sports heroes on his wall. He had CEOs of companies. It's just an amazing story. So I hope you will tune in and see that. The book is called Throttle Up: How to Accelerate the Impact of 21st Century Leadership. I always say that I'm a tools, processes, and practices guide. It's a how to do this, how to do that, how to create how to create, excuse me, culture shifting storybooks, for example, is one of them. How to do the T-Switch, something I created, strategic thinking method, is all in there. So, it's more like a tech manual. It took me, a lot of people write books, say, "Oh, how long did it take you? 6 months? Oh, a year?" It took me 4 years and 4 months, and I can't tell you it was not a labor of love. It was very hard book to write. It was a very hard book to write, but I'm so glad I did it. And, I, it answered the pain and the heartache that I felt that I needed to get out on paper and in print. So, I truly appreciate that.
Fantastic, John. This has been fabulous. I really, really am grateful to you for having taken the time on a busy patch that you're in. You've just come back. You've have so much going on. You're attending conferences. You're sought after as a speaker of all different topics, and so I'm very, very grateful. I think this is one topic I can assure you. I mean, there is such curiosity around the world, and I think you've just been the person who can help us. Just put a we're not really looking to get into the bowels of the technology, but the implications of technology, right, more broadly, and how do you take the leadership uh, lessons that we know, or the leadership journey that we've had. And I think you beautifully summarized so much of what you've done from your past life, and someone who's such a sort of a keen learner, right? And you're always sort of doing the next thing, the new thing, the in thing. And I really appreciate that where you come up with some contemporary sort of practices. So I'm gonna obviously gonna share with you as we process and finalize the episode. But I'll invite you to Asia and to India, John. Please do let me know when your travels come make it for you to come over here. And there's a good chance I will come down to have some family there next year or this year. Then maybe we try to meet in person. But
Yeah, it'd be great. Wonderful.
yeah, thank you
Look
once
forward to
again.
it.
And
Thank you.
have a good weekend. Have a good rest of the month, and we shall be in touch once again. So take care and have a good day. Thanks, John.
Thank you so much.